Hello, everyone, and welcome to the series of dialogue on Japanese aging society is not only about old people, organized by Tokyo College. From various disciplinary points of view, in the form of short dialogues, we will reflect on how Japan and other countries have dealt with demographic shifts to shed light on potential futures for our older society. In this dialogue, we will talk about language and sustainability. Today's speakers are Project Assistant Professor Marcin Jazemski. Dr. Jajamsi is working on research in the area of sustainability, such as natural resource management, food security, and sustainable transitions for future society. And the other speaker is postdoctoral fellow Dr. Naoko Hosokawa, who is a sociolinguist here at Tokyo College. She is particularly interested in the question of language and identity, as well as linguistic diversity. My name is Flavia Baldari. I am a project researcher here at Tokyo College, and I will be acting as a moderator today. So first of all, I would ask you if you can tell us about your own interest in the broad field of aging society, in aging studies, and how do scholars in your discipline study the subject? It's a broad question, maybe you can start with your own interest. So maybe Naoko, you can go first.
Yes, thank you very much for your introduction, and I'll talk about my approach to this question. So let me share my screen. Yes, so I am going to talk about the question of aging from the point of social linguistics, and especially I'm interested in the question of democracy of language. What does it mean? It is about accessible language for all. And so I'll approach this from the point of view of particularly language policy. And there have been several initiatives to work to make language accessible to all, not only about aging, but also for the diversity of the Japanese society. So I start with the Easy Japanese initiative, which was mainly developed for the non-Japanese native speakers, starting from the earthquake events, especially from 1995, which started at the Hirosaki University, which is gathering more attention these years. And then there were several initiatives by the National Institute for Japanese Language and Linguistics on the use of loanwords, on the use of medical jargons. And these years, we have further development about the Easy Japanese guideline. In 2020, there was a handbook by the Immigration Service Agency and the Agency for Cultural Affairs publishing accessible handbook for everyone to make the language easier to understand. So I try to look at these issues as a comprehensive project to make language easier for everyone to understand and everyone to communicate, and how they are related to the question of aging. So I will just briefly introduce the initiative taken by the National Institute for Japanese Language and Linguistics. So at the beginning of the 2000s, there was a big survey and a project to make the use of loanwords more accessible. So they looked at 176 Western, mostly English-derived loanwords to be replaced by some equivalent which are easier to understand. And they have firstly surveyed the level of understanding for Western loanwords used mainly in public domain, such as public service, medical service, or disaster prevention. And I give here 3 examples of the words they try to replace. The first example is reduce, which is actually used in a particular field. So not about the general reduction of quantity, it is about the reduction of waste. So the word is used in the Japanese context quite in a particular way. And this understanding, they found that the general level of understanding was about 10.3%, whereas those who are above 60s understood 99.1%. And the second example is the hazard map, which is used for the disaster prevention. And the understanding level was about 20% for everyone, but about 10% for the elderly people. And the third example, informed consent, which is used for the medical field. General understanding was 23%, but the elderly people understood only 12% this term. So we already see that trying to work on the difficulty of certain Western words actually help communication for the elderly people as well. So the second part of the 2000s, there was also the survey and the project to make the medical jargon accessible to all. So they did a similar survey to see how many people understand the difficult medical jargon and try to give easier explanation. So I here also give 3 examples. So the first type of example is COPD, which is chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. So it's kind of the acronym or abbreviation, which was understood only by 10% of the respondents. And the second example is a remission, which is also like the case of reduce, used only for a very particular field in the Japanese context. So not only, not the general meaning of remission, but this is particularly for the remission of disease, so the state of medical condition, which was understood by only 13% of the respondents. And then the final example is actually the same as the example that we saw for the use of Western loanwords, so informed consent, which again is used in the medical field. And they found out that actually the level of understanding was improved to 70% in this survey, which was done about 5 years after the first survey. So we already see the level of understanding was improved after the first project to widely disseminate these terms with the Japanese equivalent. And of course, the medical jargons are the ones that are most seen by the elderly people who have more, generally more opportunities to deal with the medical conditions and receive medical services. So this is also deeply connected to the question of aging and how to make the welfare of the elderly people. So my approach and my personal interest is the language used for a more inclusive society. So we don't restrict this question to the elderly society, but we understand that easy language to understand for elderly people is actually also easy to understand for non-native Japanese speakers or non-specialists in particular fields such as medicine and public policy. And also generally everyone better communicates through these policies. So I am interested in dealing with the question of aging from the point of view of language democracy or language welfare from a broader perspective. So that is my point of view. So I'll just stop sharing the screen and I'll be interested in asking you the question about your point of view from the sustainable science, Martin. So what do you think?
Thank you, Naoko. That was very interesting to learn about linguistic approach to the language in the broad area of aging studies. So when it comes to sustainability science, which I'm representing and identifying myself as a main disciplines that I come from, I think it's necessary a little bit to explain what actually sustainability science is, and before I answer this question, and actually what type of different sustainability approaches exist. So generally, it's sustainability is, of course, it's concerned with different complex interaction between nature and society, and the society, of course, includes the older population that we are like now concerned about. But also sustainability seeks solution towards challenges that threaten like a humanity collective, like a well-being. And again, this is the part that actually the aging is included, that in the coming future, we are predicting to have like a larger ratio of people at age of 65 and above, and even the people at age of 80 and older are becoming quite a larger number of people in our population. So we start thinking that, of course, the future well-being, it's also should have a large focus on the older people. But then this is like what is sustainability is. But then when it comes to the discipline, which is like sustainability science, we have two ways of looking at sustainability science, because one way of looking into sustainability science is more like science about sustainability, because science about sustainability is the way how we understand how this complex physical, biological, and social system function. But then when it comes to the science for sustainability, which is opposite to science about sustainability, so science for sustainability is more about supporting sustainable policies and positive social, for especially concerning this social transformation. So it's about creating like good triggers of positive social transformation for meeting our needs without like compromising the ability of future generation to meet their own needs. So we have these two ways of looking at the sustainability, but both, you can imagine, are completely concerning about the society, because of course sustainability was created to maintain our human population. And so sustainability science focuses, if to sum up, both approaches still focus specifically on understanding this dynamic interaction between nature and society. So so when it comes in this larger area of what sustainability is and what sustainability science talk about, I would like to share a little bit 2 slides. What is my personal interest in sustainability science and sustainability, and how this aging is relevant. So let me share the screen first. So when it comes to like my interest and my approach to sustainability and how aging is related to sustainability and sustainable development in general. So first one, in my review paper that I published in Urban Sustainability, I looked actually how aging, but also the shrinking population, which are related to processes, but both processes are also a little bit different and separated, how these two processes actually will impact achieving sustainable goals. So of course, sustainable goals, these are like 17 goals that have been announced in 2015, and that's those goals supposed to guide our sustainable development and to be achieved by 2030. But when we looked at the different goals, and sometimes they a little bit seems a bit detached from each other, but when we look at those goals in the context of older population, we see that actually there is a number of goals and also a number of targets under the goals that actually with the older population, we can have more opportunities to achieve them. So a smaller population on older population can be, for instance, very helpful for achieving goals related to life on land, life on below the water. So in general, the biodiversity issues, but also it can bring some opportunities related to like clean water, for instance, also climate action. But then when it comes to society and economy zone, it's more sometimes challenges than opportunities, because in these two domains, actually, we have a lot of challenges related to reducing the poverty. For instance, we have more challenges related to like maintaining good health of our population, or making sure that there is enough food for everyone, because for instance, with older population, we have a lesser number of people working on the production side of the food. And on the other hand, still we know that there is some poverty issue among older people. So we know that maybe smaller income on pension may also result in, for instance, in lower food accessibility, not only the availability on the production side. And the same comes to the economy, when we have some challenges related to the economic growth, because with lower number of people working, and also with the maybe lower number of people who are thinking on more creative invention and patents, we see that there are certain challenges. But then we know that lower consumptions, for instance, can improve our reduction of waste and being more responsible consumers in the future. So there is number of opportunities and challenges, and it's very interesting to look on both sides and how both sides are relevant to older and population, to the aging society. But also when it comes to my personal interest, I'm also quite interested how actually this pro-environmental behavior in aging world is changing. So we know that with a number of older people, we will have certain number of people who have free time, and most likely those people, if they are in the relatively good health, are able to contribute to the, for instance, nature conservation, but also being on that interface with nature, being inside within the nature is also necessary for older people to maintain their physical and psychological health, because that has been proven that it's necessary for more healthier aging. So I see that there are certain pathways for sustainable development with engaging people in the nature conservation and in the pro-environmental behavior. So that's how I see sustainability science and sustainability in general relevant to the aging society.
Thank you, Marcin and Naoko, for introducing your discipline and how your discipline is studying and researching on aging society. So it's just, I want to ask a follow-up question, and briefly, if you can briefly respond to how and what are the interventions that your discipline can use to contribute to understanding the aging society. And maybe we can start with Marcin this time.
Oh, thank you, Flavia. So yeah, that's also a very interesting question, how actually sustainability science is approaching aging society. And that could be also quite broad questions, because it depends a little bit what type of sustainability also you talk about. But you can imagine, if we look at the sustainability science that is looking at our complex socio-ecological system, we can try to from our perspective, from sustainability science, we try to a little bit analyze the situation. So its sustainability is, of course, problem-driven science, but also we look at the different stakeholders and different groups being involved in the broader picture of some problem. But still, I don't want to call aging society is a problem. It's indeed, as I was saying, it's a challenge, but also giving also opportunities. So this kind of broad look on the different aspects of the situation can provide us different views, and of course identify what sort of opportunities and challenges there are, but also what sort of approaches we can come up with, and how maybe engaging different type of groups, stakeholders would help us understanding the situation, but also would help us to address the situation. And then there is another fascinating part in the sustainability science, that actually in the sustainability science, we are not afraid of engaging with different disciplines, because sustainability science itself is ideally transdisciplinary science. Of course, it's difficult to achieve this level of transdisciplinary, but at least interdisciplinary and cross-disciplinary science. So we are not afraid of engaging, like we have today now, talking with linguists and look how language is relevant to the aging society, but talking with economists, talking with, of course, environmentalists, but talking with social scientists. So being able to have this dialogue with also different disciplines is certainly one of approaches that sustainability science provides. And what is necessary, we also need to be able to communicate with policymakers, and I believe also linguists as well. And I found that actually in Naoko's presentation, that is also one of the key factors that understanding the language and doing the survey and communicating with policymakers, to provide the situation, like to picture the situation, that's how the language exists now and maybe needs some improvements. So the ability of presenting this very complex situation to the policymakers in order to promote some sustainability-oriented policies is also one of the key approaches that we have. And so a little bit started looking at Naoko's presentation, how the linguists are relevant to this question. So how about if you could a little bit explore more, like Naoko, how in your discipline different intervention exists. I know it's already has been captured in your slides, but if you could a little bit recap, and if there's anything else you would like to add, I would be happy to hear about it.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, as you say, the interdisciplinary approach is very important for the social linguistic field as well, because it involves not only linguistics as a discipline, but also general society, general public, and also the policymakers. And one of the contributions that this kind of research can make to the aging society is that by reframing this question of language into a more general question of inclusive language, we can take examples from other societies to learn lessons. So Japan is one of the quickest countries to reach this aging society state. So we don't have many examples in the past. However, if we look at the democracy of language as a larger question, there are many societies which have gone through the diversification of the population and how to democratize language. So we have other examples to learn from. So that's one of the benefit of this kind of research, to make it as a comprehensive research. And also we can talk about the public involvement in the society in general. So not only aging elderly population, but also other parts of the society. Everyone can get involved in the social activities through the awareness raising with the democratizing language. And speaking of sustainability, the word term sustainability, or SDGs, are one of those words that we're discussing in terms of awareness raising and how to raise the level of understanding. So this way we can also incorporate these issues together.
Yeah, so it's really interesting to learn that we have so many synergies between these two disciplines. So I already started maybe talking about analyzing stakeholders involved. So when it comes to the language, what sort of social groups and stakeholders, aside of course from the older people, do you see relevant for instance, in your research lens?
Yeah, so actually there are many different sectors involved in this kind of initiatives. So of course, the public policy makers are very important. They are those who are giving information to the general public. So these initiatives actually often started from the public policy makers in the government and the local municipalities to give information in accessible language. However, there have been more discussions these days to make this kind of efforts to democratize a language as multi-directional efforts. So not only those who give information, disseminate information as a general the policy makers, but also those who are receiving information, those who are communicating at the more local levels can learn from these initiatives to use the accessible language to communicate in a more accessible way. So actually, yeah, it involves not only policymakers or researchers, of course, the researchers and specialists of language who can also give aid to how to change the terminology, how to give explanation, but also the general public, including elderly population, including non-native speakers, including non-specialists of any specialized fields. So really, it is a project that involves everyone in the society.
Thank you, Naoko, for your insights. And maybe, Martin, do you have some comments on what Naoko just said? If you want to add something.
Yeah, so I see actually certainly a lot of this similarities and synergies happening like between these two approaches. So also in sustainability science and also in my research, we certainly emphasize that we need to understand like how each of us is relevant to the situation, and how actually other like stakeholders such as policymakers and also like local governments and different institutions are like responsible, in a sense like not really responsible, but how they are relevant to addressing these challenges related to the aging society. So and analyzing the dynamics between the different stakeholders and how it actually affects different like sustainability pathways. It's one of the like approaches that I mentioned a while ago from sustainability science, but also we understand this is the way how actually we can address different challenges.
Thank you. Thank you. I don't want to interrupt, but I think it's time to wrap up today's session. And thank you very much, Martin and Naoko, for your insights. It's been a very fascinating exchange on this timely topic. And personally, I find it interesting, these two ways of analyzing this topic. So from an academic point of view, and I think the keyword is really interdisciplinarity, transdisciplinarity, and is what we do at Tokyo College. So I found it very interesting and stimulating for our work here, but also from the personal point of view as a part of a general public, all these topics really affects our everyday life. And so you really touched something which is very interesting for every one of us, I think. So thank you very much. And thank you for watching this video. And I want just to add to stay tuned for our upcoming dialogue on this topic. Thank you very much and see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pepe. Thank you very much, Naoko.